What is the one story you want to tell that you can never fit into a conversation? Episode 2. First episode on other channel, link in description. We were playing Cards Against Humanity with a couple we'd known for several years. One of the cards came up with something to do with bisexual, and the husband of the other couple brings up something slightly but not overtly condescending. His wife defends bisexuals against it, and he doubles down. My wife and I both admit we are bisexual. Uncomfortable moment, but it passes. A bit later, we are all buzzing, and the husband admits he'd like to see his wife in a three-way with another girl. We mention that B doesn't mean that we are into three-ways, or swinging or anything else, just how we are built, and that we've never come close to having a threesome. B polyamory. We then have to tell him we are not offended. You don't know if you don't bring it up, but be careful, you might get your wish with your wife. We continue with weekly game nights for another 3 or 4 months, until they move 3 states away. One day, as I'm at work, he sends me a text that he finally talked his wife into a threesome, and he's giddy with anticipation. I warn him again, be careful what you ask for, and watch your expectations. I don't hear from him for a while. Their Facebook feed goes on much as before, nothing too interesting. About 6 months later, her status goes from married to it's complicated. I ask my wife what's up, if she knows. Oh yeah, the wife decided that women are way better in bed than him. She tried to explain it away, then tried telling herself she was wrong, but after their 15th three-way in 6 months, she decided that their relationship, which was mostly just mutual attraction anyway, was over. She didn't just give him up, she gave up men completely. A month later, I'm sitting on the phone in my car while dude is doing a pour me when I do an I told you so. That was the last time we talked. In 2014 I was working in Europe and met up with a potential licensee. I worked for the parent company and we licensed out franchises internationally. We were roughly 30 miles outside of Barcelona grabbing dinner. The waitstaff only spoke Spanish, which we didn't speak, but we figure out how to communicate. After dinner we go back to the car, and in place of the car was a Polish sticker. We get directions and walk a few blocks to the station. The guy I was with is a successful businessman in the Middle East, and he is from Syria, so he has a Syrian passport. The police officers only know Spanish and again, we don't understand anything they are saying. We end up pulling Google Translate up on one of their computers, so we can communicate. They ask for our passports and they don't flinch at my US passport, but they look taken aback by the Syrian passport. They begin to ask us interrogating question about why we there. We explain the company we work for. We put on fitness events all over the world. They ultimately tell us that we'll have to pay €90 fine for parking illegally. At this point we are all pretty relaxed, and they start to ask us how much it would be to grant them a few entries into the event. I grab the keyboard and type in 90. We all laughed our asses off, and it was a pretty cool moment between a young American, a Syrian businessman, and 3 Spanish police officers who didn't speak each other's languages. They decided to not charge us for the parking violation, and we shook hands and headed out the door. My dad got headbutted by a giraffe. We were in Kenya and went to a giraffe sanctuary. You stand on this huge platform, so you're face to face with the giraffes. I was quite scared to feed them up, so close, so my dad was feeding one. He turned around and said, "See, there's nothing to be scared of," just as the giraffe swung his head, knocking my dad off his feet. Luckily, my dad wasn't hurt, and weirdly enough, I stopped being scared after that. I work a midnight shift once a week. I get home at 6:30 in the morning. One time, I told my husband that a little Chihuahua mix is a terrible guard dog because he doesn't even get out of bed when I open the door. He told me this. The dog goes downstairs at 5:55 every Sunday morning, the day I come home late. He waits for me at the window, and after I park my car, he runs back up the stairs and gets back in bed. My husband says he always knows that I'll be walking in within the next minute because the pup lets him know. I think that's such a cute, sweet example of how our dogs actually care about us and know more than we think. I haven't been able to work that into convo, though. Finally a place to tell my story. I'm from the US, so between my sophomore and junior years of college, I studied abroad for a summer semester in Spain. We would be there for about 5 weeks, so we had about 3 weekends to do whatever we wanted. The other 2 weekends were spent traveling there and back. A group of us decided that we wanted to go to Paris for a long weekend and booked the flights and the rest of the arrangements. Here we are, flying out to Paris in our second week in Europe, and everyone is really excited. We land at the airport and jump on a bus to go to our hostel, and about 30 minutes into the trip, I needed my wallet for something. I'm searching everywhere for my wallet. Everywhere. It is nowhere to be found. I'm pissed. It had my ID, every bit of cash for my weekend trip, my cards, everything. So naturally, I'm in full freak the fuck out mode. There's really nothing to do about it, and we arrive at the hostel and I have nothing to pay for my room. Reluctantly, I use the phone to call my dad, who thankfully picked up, and we defeat the language barrier, and he pays for my weekend stay in the hostel. Now, I have a place to stay at least, but no way to pay for any of the activities we planned. The next morning I'm stuck in the hostel and I reluctantly call my dad again, and he says he will wire me some cash. I'm in a foreign land and don't speak the language, so I basically wander around, alone, in the streets of Paris trying to find a place to get my cash. After an hour of searching, I figure it out. We get the cash sent through, and now I can enjoy my vacation. This is the crazy part. A year later, I read a thing online about hidden Facebook messages. Something pretty much like a spam folder for your Facebook messages. I'm curious, so I jump on and look at my spam folder. I see a curious message, read it, and I'll be damned if it isn't a flight attendant from the flight that I lost my wallet on, and wondering if it was mine and how to get it back to me. A full fucking year later, and if I would have checked my spam folder, I wouldn't have had to go the rest of my trip without my wallet. So, I'm in a short story class in uni about 12 years ago, and my teacher is talking about our guidelines for the final paper. She says we can't use Wikipedia as a source, because it isn't very reliable and anyone who wants to can just go on the website and edit it. She then tells us, in my class last semester I showed them an example of this by looking up O.J. Simpson on wikipedia.com. It didn't say anywhere on the page that O.J. killed his wife, so I edited it with O.J. Simpson killed his wife. All of a sudden the kid sitting next to me got up, grabbed his backpack and quickly walked out of the classroom. I didn't think anything of it, but then the guy on the other side of me says, "You know that was his son, right?" Crazy stuff I tell you. What are the odds that O.J. Simpson's son was in this class of about 30 people when my teacher was using an example of O.J. Simpson on Wiki? I posted this once before, but how I accidentally pissed off the crows. Oh god, it's a long story. It started when these 4 boys around 10 or 11 would walk past my house every week to go swimming, and every week, for weeks in a row, outside my house the same kid got shat on by a massive crow. Obviously we found this really funny, and didn't make the connection at the time he must have done something to piss the crow off. I was putting bird food out in my garden, but I was getting loads of feral pigeons, so I was trying to shoo them away, which this crazy crow must have taken offense to. Soon after I noticed that I was getting caught at by crows all the time. No matter where I went there was angry crows cawing at me. That's when I googled crows and saw that they can hold grudges, recognize people, tell other crows about "bad people." So I tried to make a peace offering by throwing food on my shed roof. My kitchen window, with the sink in front of it, overlooks the shed roof. After throwing food out I stood by the window doing the dishes. This must have also pissed this crow off. Later that day a crow started absolutely screeching and cawing. I went through to the kitchen to see what was going on when a huge bird shit landed on my window. In 20 years there has been no bird shit on that window, because there is a big ledge above it. So this crow must have hung its butt over the ledge just to do that. I went to bed that night, only to be woken up at 5 AM by screaming right outside my bedroom window. I live on the first floor, so it couldn't have been a human. I googled crow screaming, and sure enough that was the noise I heard. It had chosen the only window with a light on to do that. Later on that day there was a big crow sitting on a tree near that window. If anyone else went to the window it just stayed still, but if it saw me, it started bouncing on the branch, like it thought it was funny. Obviously after the shitting and screaming I wasn't going to give it any food that day, I did give it food the next day, and it must have taken the hint, because it never shat on my windows, or woke me up by screaming again. However, for about a year and a half, every crow for a mile radius round my house would angrily caw at me. Don't piss off the crows. To the Captain America Winter Soldier blue carpet premiere in London. We got there early enough to be right by the fence for autographs, selfies, whatever from the cast. It was a school day though, so I felt bad for the kids who showed up in time for the event, but not early enough to get in line. I let a bunch of school kids in front of me, pushing me out of range for selfies, and I was fine with that. But then here he comes. Samuel L. Jackson is mere feet from me, and I'm separated by a wall of people. I can't get a selfie, I can't shake his hand, but you can't be that close to Samuel L. Jackson and do nothing. So I hollered, unabashed, "Samuel L. just yell at me." He looked up, made eye contact. Looking impatient, he yelled over the crowd, "Boy, you all the way in the back." And that's how I was dismissed, but I acquired a story for a lifetime. A family friend was babysitting me and her grandson. He liked hunting, so he had tons of toy guns, and we were running around the house and shooting each other with them. I ducked into the bedroom with the door open and waited until I heard footsteps. I shot out of that room, guns blazing, complete with machine gun sound effects. The problem was that it wasn't the kid. I about gave that 60-year-old woman a heart attack. She swore and stormed off, but I couldn't stop laughing. One time I hit a curb driving out of a parking lot. I know it was a curb because I hit that curb 1/3 times I'm in that terribly designed parking lot, and it made a loud enough noise that some family walking into the building thought I hit another car and were like taking photos of me and looking around for the car they thought I damaged. In 3rd grade there was a girl I used to hang out with. She had a weird laugh. It sounded like a horse's neigh. One day she was very happy about something and kissed me. After that, whenever I laughed it sounded like an A2. I ended up going to another school after that and lost that laugh. Nobody cares about mountain biking, but I had a fantastic crash where I fell off a cliff and landed in a shallow frigid river, and when I got up I realized I had landed on my bike and the pedal had punctured my ass cheek. I walked in the river 2 kilometers back to the car, pushing my busted bike. The key fob was pooched from the water, so I had to use the key, but hands were too cold to work, so I started the car and drove with my elbows. Cell phone was wet, so I drove to the ranger station. Ranger station was closed for the season, so I tried my cell. Hands were so cold I used my tongue. It worked, but no reception. Kept driving, bleeding all over my car, until I got to a gas station and had them call me an ambulance. The medic wondered why I loaded my bike into the car before getting help. One day I was driving to my parents' house. The way to my parents is on a pretty active highway, but about halfway on there is a small town. I was at the end of the town when I see something black in the road. At first I think it's a piece of tire, but then he raises his little head up, and I swear to heck we made eye contact. It was the tiniest black kitten. Luckily I was going slow enough to drive over him and not over him. I immediately pull over and run back into the road and snatch him up. I didn't look before I ran into the highway and a semi was coming in the lane I was in. I ran back, tripped and fell flat of my ass, and the semi stops in the road and honks his horn. I scream sorry and hold up the kitten like Simba. The truck driver gives me a shrug and a thumbs up and goes along his merry way. I gave the kitten to my mom and she named him Midnight. He's an asshole. I was going to an on-field concert after a baseball game. So once the game was finished, a stream of people, myself included, are going down the stairs to reach the field in trance. I start hearing shouting and a scream behind me on the stairs. I stopped and turned around to see what was happening, and somehow I caught the arm of a woman who had been falling down the stairs, the cause of the commotion. I hauled her to her feet and we sort of just stared at each other for a moment before continuing down the stairs. I will never know how this happened so perfectly, and it will never happen again. but damn, I felt like a ninja. I met the bassist from Tool once. Super nice guy. The whole experience was great until I went home and told my family, hey guys, I think I met someone famous today. Do you know the band Tool? Family, no way you met someone from Tool? Who? What did you say? I asked him if his band was pretty popular. They mock me to this day. You have message from the story man. Like and sub to get nothing.